Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Hindsight. I'm Vani from Kalaari Capital, and I'm absolutely delighted today to host Shashank Bijapur. Shashank is founder and CEO of Spotdraft, an AI-powered contact management platform for in-house legal teams. He is a corporate lawyer, for those of you who may think that being a CS grad from IIT is a required background to be entrepreneur. He'll have a lot to say. He returned to India to build a software for the world, and Spotdraft is in many ways a problem that I'm sure he had a lot of domain background in solving for. He has customers globally and has cracked the India-US GTM. So there'll be a lot of things we can ask of him today and learn. I'm excited to speak with Shashank, especially about the early signals and choices that made the company successful. Shashank, welcome. And I really appreciate you making the time to pay forward and answer the questions we get a lot of founders asking us, and who better to answer it than another founder.
Thank you, Vani. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to it.
So, Shashank, it all starts with an idea, right? So I have two-part question there. One is, you, of course, came with a deep subject matter expertise, being a lawyer, a practicing lawyer that you were. But I'm sure you know there is a statistical bias about lawyers or others, maybe an accountant or whoever, becoming a startup entrepreneur. And when you decided to take the plunge, how much that you had the domain expertise gave you the conviction to start, but what were the areas of concerns you had to overcome first, of course, in your own decision to jump into it, but also in how others early were evaluating the company? Obviously, now you're successful, so it doesn't really matter. People see you for the CEO and leader that you are. But let's go back to those beginning days.
Yeah, the statistic is real. Not a lot of lawyers end up being founders. And the main challenge that I saw as a lawyer was lawyers are trained to spot every risk, right? And founding a company means ignoring most of them. So that attention to detail, ensuring that every dot and every comma was there, sometimes ended up being a problem more than a asset. Because now my co-founders were like, when do we launch? And I would be like, you know what, we can just improve this a little bit more. And Madhav, my co-founder, would say that, hey man, we need to go to market, get data before, just keep on building. So that was problem number one. But that said, I think domain expertise definitely helped us a lot. It helped us in building product. It helped us in GTM. It helped us in just understanding how lawyers function. See, again, to be a lawyer, you need to go to law school, pass the bar, and then be eligible to do what you're doing. If you're not doing that, then you haven't seen this ilk up close. At most, you've seen either suits and figured out that probably this is how lawyers work. So it definitely helped. Well, it is a little bit true, but not entirely true.
Yeah. Yeah, the suits makes it look really glamorous to be a lawyer. Yeah. Sorry, I kind of interrupted you. I couldn't help it, but I don't know if you lost a thought there in closing out.
So all I was trying to say was that my brain was always trying to de-risk everything before building anything. So the indemnity always came first. And the business took a back turn, and it was a little bit over time that I learned how to do that better. That's one. Second is I knew very little about technology compared to what I know today. So I didn't know, Python was a snake or a programming language, and it was that kind of learning that I had to learn over the years.
So that brings to another really critical question at the very beginning in choosing your co-founders and or your founding team, right? The first 10, 20 people that you hire, the first 2, 3 senior people in the team make all the difference. And what did you bring from a mindset to that hiring, where you looked for them? what you looked for, right? And today, with the benefit of experience, what would be your advice on do's and don'ts from that point of view?
Yeah, I think this is very important. I would say that picking a co-founder is almost as important or as critical as how you would pick your partner in your personal life, your husband or your wife. Um, I think my thought process was I wanted to pick a co-founder who, not the guy who I would end up enjoying a good day with, but somebody I could trust on my birthday, right? And also came with a skill set. Madhav, and it was the same for him as well. Madhav and I organically met together to where I was working on the idea of Spotdraft, and I said, "Hey man, can you help me build some of these things?" And he started building, and he got excited about it. And he's the smartest person I know. Period. Like he just he's a savant at what he does. So that helped too. And eventually, we were good friends. Now we are great friends. We have the kind of bonhomie where we don't need to speak to each other and we still understand what the other is saying. So like two peas from a pod in some ways. So I mean the math was clear. I am a lawyer and a seller. I needed a builder and I needed the deepest technical mind. But I also needed someone who I could enjoy the good day with, but also trust on a worse day. And I think that is what I was looking for in Madhav as a co-founder, and that kind of extends to the early team as well. The first 10 people, we were all these are people who did not really care about how much money they got paid, but they really loved the hustle and they loved the build. Some of those earliest people were just so tied into the idea of building Spotdraft that overnight one day we decided that, hey, we need to move from Gurgaon, where we started, to Bangalore, and that move had to happen in 2 weeks. We were, I think, about 15 people. 14 of the 15 people overnight said we are going to move. The 15th person was expecting and she couldn't travel. That's the only reason she didn't come. So that is how close knit that team was. Most of them stayed for over 5, 7 years in the company, and all of them have gone on to do excellent stuff. I think that um, early team is so foundational in the way in which not just the product, but also the culture and how you build the company.
So one would say, gosh, Shashank got lucky. But we both know of course, luck is important to everything in life, but it isn't just some dumb luck, right?
Right.
So what do you think early on you did right to get the team to feel part of Spotdraft family and stick around and do things, right? So it isn't very random, though it feels we make it easy when we say it as you did, but there's a lot that goes behind it. So unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, so it was like a hacker house where everybody would sit together and there was absolute transparency on what was happening in the company. Now, as we've gotten bigger, there are now cabins and walls that have been built in, and people don't share as much, and things become strategy. But that time, strategy was just openly discussing everything that was there. So that kind of helped people. So the sales guy knew what engineering problems were. Engineering could hear all the sales and marketing discussions that were happening, and that kind of cross pollination of information just got us all together and we built a better product. I remember early days we had this we had a terrible time with a customer and we weren't able to launch. At that time, it wasn't the person sitting in the room with the customer who felt like we were losing, but every single person was, it was almost like watching a match and they were all rooting for us and saying, hey, we need to make this win. People, without us asking, would stay back 2 days in a row without taking a shower in the office, smelling, the office would smell like a pigsty at times, but their core focus was, we need to win. I think that just building that energy and pumping people up, it happens. There is no secret sauce to it. I think if you are passionate, that passion ends up permeating into the rest of the team. People who are not good enough don't end up making the cut in the interview or barely a month in the company. That kind of also separates the grain from the chaff.
So most founders stumble and struggle till they're coming to their own on one thing, which is having difficult conversations, right? culturally we avoid it, but also when you've been a solo worker, you are a solo contributor, you aren't trained to do it, but lawyers are trained to do that, to have difficult conversations, as well as balance between when to mediate, when to be in the face, so to speak, right? So you have all of those skills, but how do you bring that into how you solve problems today, both internal and external, but internal especially? So what leadership style do you bring in decision making and difficult conversations?
So I'll start with the difficult conversations piece. Difficult conversations, early days, you tend to avoid those difficult conversations, and that
But
is
did
deferred.
you?
And
I would think Shashank wouldn't.
I'd like to say that the first few months you're still trying to put the difficult conversation in a positive spin
Mm,
and try and present it, but that is not kindness at all. Like it very quickly we realized that if we had to be honest, we had to be brutally honest in front of each other and call crap if it was in front of us. So we continue to do that. We don't let anything linger overnight. If
mm,
there is a challenge, we speak about it and we speak about it openly. We also have clear what I would call as areas of responsibility. So we don't try and rule over other person's area of responsibility. And our goals are aligned. Madhav and I have common goals. We are aligned to what
mm,
this company should be, what it means for us professionally and personally. And we evaluate all our decisions against that benchmark that we have. As far as the larger leadership is concerned, this was an acquired skill for me because early days you tend to be that dictator that goes and just says my way or highway and everybody follows. Then slowly, once leadership starts coming in, that style doesn't go away. So now they're thinking, well, this guy got us, but doesn't let me make any decisions. He's just doing his own thing. Like we are just a rubber stamp. So then you start getting that feedback. You turn that around, and then you
mm,
say that, okay, look, let's hear the room out. Let's hear what everybody else wants to say, and eventually the areas of responsibility gets a lot more dispersed, and you're focused on higher leverage tasks, whereas the rest of the leadership is focused on their areas of responsibility where they go deep. So my style is I don't interfere unless OKRs are not matching up, or there is murmurs or complaints that are coming on something not working well. I assume it's working well because I see the stats, and ultimately you have to run this as a like a sports team, not like a bunch of friends trying to do something, and that's how I judge them.
So, Shashank, maybe you can dig a little deeper for me on this learned skills of leadership, which is, of course, forever evolving. The leader you are today isn't the same leader 5 years ago. And if you and I have this conversation in 10 years, you'll be a different leader then, right? That's only natural. It's a process and progress of evolution. It happens fast, it happens slow. Since it's a continuum of a journey, pause for a second and talk about what are your personal traits that help you continue to evolve as a leader.
So I think a few things. I while I like to look at high level numbers and overall progress, when I get into a problem, I get into a problem deep. For example, um, we thought that we could completely innovate our delivery system. So me and my chief of staff got together and we vibe coded the entire thing. We sat down. We were like forward deployed engineers. Sat down and built the whole thing out, tested it, and then handed it over. So then, what ends up happening is you're connected to the real world problems, and you're not there isn't psychophancy where you're listening to five
Mm,
people and whatever they say becomes what it
mm,
is. That's one. Second is we have a very open town hall structure where every month
mm,
there's a town hall. People can ask questions ad lib. We answer ad lib. They can also write down questions anonymously if they want to ask. So we get hard asked. I have more hard questions coming to me in my town hall than sometimes in my board meeting.
mm.
So that I think creates a culture where nobody is above
The
kind of
law.
the
Mm,
law and scrutiny, and they
mm,
and everybody is answerable for what it is. And when some of the junior most folks see you do that, they inculcate that, and when they become leaders, they start doing the same thing. That's one. And third is, I have used professional coaches to help me evolve as well. There are times where I don't know what the right answer is, or I don't know how to deal with a new leader that's come in, and I'm unable to communicate feedback, or just balancing personal life and professional life.
So if you had to do this again, would you do it earlier, sooner? Because this is always one of those questions. Wish I had done this before. You think that?
100%. I were no longer with Spotdraft, I would continue to have my coach. What ends up happening is valuation went from X to 2X and 2X to 4X. Your team and your revenue went 4X, but your brain is still there, right? Like you then need to surround yourself with the right set of people and learn from others on how to evolve.
So, for most founders, I feel one of the questions they feel damned if I do, damned if I don't, is this whole question of market size. If you say, oh, my market is 10 billion or 100 billion, people are like, well, don't give you any credibility. If you say, I don't know what the market size is, that's a non-starter. So how did you approach in the beginning this whole question of TAM, SAM, what exactly is your market? How did you articulate that in the early stages of the company?
Yeah, it was hard. I didn't even know what Tam and Sam meant. I went to law school, so it didn't come naturally to me. But looking back, I would say that Tam is the fairy tale that investors want to hear, and Sam is the number that really keeps you honest, right? So, um, I mean, every deck, I'm sure you've seen a bunch of these, has some 5 billion, $50 billion, and nobody has sold $50 billion of anything in 1 year, right? And Sam is the only piece that keeps you honest. And I did not understand that earlier. I thought I was building God's greatest gift to mankind, and everyone across the board, everywhere, everything, all at once is going to just jump in and buy. And one of our early investors said, "No, you've got to segment the market. You need to, your SAM is much smaller." And I refused to believe that. I actually learned it the hard way. So we had sold the same product to a company with about 200 people, and a global, and at least three global conglomerates that were there. Same product. And I realized that the single one was actually serviceable and this large one wasn't. So I had to redefine what Sam meant at that point. But I think it's a two-way street. Tam and Sam are industry terms. I would say that, hey, this is the entire universe of people who can buy, but I want to define my beachhead first, because Sam is actually much bigger than the beachhead. I want to define the beachhead and show growth in my beachhead, and show a path to how that beachhead can be replicated and why that is replicable. We did that while raising our Series A, and that helped us because we were right at that. It took us a long time to get that beachhead right and sort of cross the chasm and build product market fit. But then in my Series A slide, I didn't have a TAM SAM slide. I said, this is my beachhead, and this is how this kind of reproduces itself.
So whether it's intuitive or just being a renegade, you did absolutely the right thing. For founders listening to it, I would say, honestly, Shashank, it's one of those founder myths that investors want to hear fairy tales. One has to start with assuming everybody knows. If they're any good at it, they know their work. So most investors, I'm not saying all investors are the same, of course they're not, but most investors I co-invest with, I don't think they will be swayed by a large TAM number, which sounds like a fairy tale, because nobody wants to buy fairy tales. They want to buy real revenue. They want to buy, real opportunity. So what you did is absolutely right on. But I keep seeing this pop up, which is why I asked the question where, I have whatever the mythical 50 billion, 100 billion, 5 billion, really doesn't matter. Even 1 billion doesn't matter how many software companies really have 1 billion. And if they do, how long did it take them to get there? Probably a couple of decades. So glad however you stumbled upon it, you did absolutely the right thing. And I hope people, other founders make note of that if they're fundraising. Talking about beachheads, that's the crossing the chasm, or there are many other sort of terminologies to that phase of targeting your earliest customers. And sometimes they surprise you. Actually, most times they surprise you either by affirming what you already know, but in a very different way, or because even negative signals are very important signals. They find something more important that you didn't assign the same priority to. So for you in establishing these beachheads, what were the top 2 or 3 learnings?
So I'll talk about the failure first. And that's the honest piece that people don't want to address. So I'll tell you how we failed and then how we then moved on. So our failure was we were trying to build contract analysis, and our first 5 customers that were there, who gave us nearly $500,000 of revenue with just a deck in hand, were some of the largest banks in Japan, largest banks in South America, in India, and all global level. And the product was put in a contract, a non-disclosure agreement, and highlight the red, amber, green, which is the good, bad, and ugly. And we said, okay, give us training data. And this is 2018-19, where there is no LLM. And they said, but well, it's called a non-disclosure agreement. I'm not disclosing it to you for training data. So we had to download fake training data. Then we had to then train on fake data. But when the real contracts were uploaded, it didn't work. So we were like, this is as good as a coin toss. So we realized this is not our beachhead. We also knew freelancers. So enterprise is not beachhead. We knew that extremely small companies, I knew that it was very high customer acquisition cost, very poor retention, inability to pay. That kind of by default led us to mid market. And in hindsight, it was actually great because that was a highly underserved market for a very big TAM. So we then started going. We said, who is willing to buy technology? So let's look at it. This is a lawyer, not the most technologically advanced cohort in any company. They've got to be working in a company that does that as a business in order to be able to adopt someone like us. So let's say somebody at Caterpillar, in Toyota is probably not going to pick a pithy 15% company sitting out of India, but the likelihood that a 200% high growth company that has a general counsel that keeps hearing do more with less, like let's go and target them, and that kind of worked. So we started off because it was COVID, and while we were trying to figure out how to work, my instruction to my head of sales was, I don't want you to be the number one CLM in the world, in US, Asia, nothing. I want you to be the number one CLM in that HSR unicorn street that's there. So his job was to go to each one of them. So our first few customers were the likes of Whatfix, PhonePe, BharatPay, Cred, Urban Company, like the likes of those. And India kind of showed us how to build product, and we started replicating the same thing in the US, and that showed us how to price and scale. So our first beachhead was India. I know it was very counterintuitive. People say PMF in India is not PMF there. I don't think we had PMF in India at all at that point, but it gave us a bunch of learning so that we didn't go and to a higher price customer, we didn't have to go and fail there. So we did some of our learning here, and then we took that and pushed it out to the US.
Yeah, not only a higher priced customer, but a more expensive market to crack. So you learned it in a low cost market. But talk about pricing strategy. This is one of you may have a great product, you might even have insights into a great domain, but sometimes the pricing strategy can be a make or break of a company, and often not enough thought is given to that. In fact, I was talking to a founder today, and I told him honestly at the end, look, you're paying customers to use your product. That doesn't tell me why your product is so great, right? And we talked for a little while. Obviously, he wasn't willing to agree with me, which is fine. I'm also not willing to write a check. So that's a different point. But I want to talk about the pricing strategy because this gets under addressed honestly. It could save a lot of good companies if they got this right. So, what were the signals you picked up in setting the pricing strategy that then allowed you to scale and compound the value?
Yeah. So pricing was very hard. We made so many mistakes in pricing early on. And our original, if I had to tell you how we used to price earlier, the Hindi term would be bakara dekh ke tika lagaya, as in you weigh the goat and then you put the price based on whatever it is. So
Yeah.
we had gone and sold the same product to a very similar looking customer for X and 10X with zero change. I think the one thing that we did was we realized it's not just about pricing, but it is also about pricing, packaging, and presenting of that pricing and packaging that's done. So just pricing alone won't kill it. Second is, how do we do pricing? My We said, let's take our base number, our last ACV in the last 3 months, because that's the only data we had, and keep increasing it in $5,000 multiples until we feel like our win rate is dropping. Right? So because the value of what we added is very hard to put on paper, like no matter how you do it, like how much value are you adding? Now there is no, lawyers here were not able to measure their time earlier. Now it's getting done faster, but faster by how much I couldn't tell, because there was no ground standard for it. So we kept pushing, and then at that time we hit a number which we thought was the Netflix pricing, which is, it is good enough. It's not cheap, but it's not too expensive. Where we wanted to make sure that it didn't get tangled in finance approvals or procurement cycles, and it could pass. And second, the way it was packaged and the way it was presented, it didn't feel very confusing. So the thing that we did, and we also studied how our competitors were pricing. So we said, look, we are going to stop breaking everything down into line items and one-time fee and implementation and support. We are going to give one single number, and that's the number. We don't overcharge you beyond that. So we went with one, let's say, for the sake of this conversation, $50,000. And that $50,000 was all inclusive. It had nothing else. So then, and we had broken down our segments into small, medium, large. So we knew based on, what they wanted, whether they were small, medium, or large, and we would give them that pricing. That just took off. Like, the objections became lower, win rate became higher, and it left enough space for our, just the teams that had to grow accounts, the CS and AM teams, to also grow these accounts. So we feel good. In a span of 1 year, our ACVs increased 3x just because of pricing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So be willing to experiment and ask for more and see what happens. Yeah.
Correct. And especially in India, like I do feel like we do have this habit of bowing down and saying okay, yes to everything. And in early days, so this should not be the priority in early days. Early days, my this thing is, it's okay if you get priced less, but if it's a customer that's willing to give you feedback and willing to give testimony to the work that you've done, that is way more important than getting $20,000 more, because then you can amplify that word to 20 other people, and that becomes your GTM wheelhouse.
You talked about competitors. I kind of want to click into that. People think about competition in different ways. And for you, was it only the paranoid survive, or look, there is no competition, we rule the world? How do you approach competition at all?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've seen that whenever there has been paranoia about competition, there's usually copying. And if you end up ignoring your competition, then that is arrogance. Um, I don't watch competitors to react and find out, okay, why aren't we doing this? I want to look at competition and say, how can we be better than them on something that they can't become? right? So that's one. And second is also just looking at the market in terms of, are we like way behind in future thinking or not? It also goes into our product sort of strategy and thinking. Um, if a competitor launches a feature or a product that we haven't even thought of, that would give me a little bit of nightmares, thinking about the fact that, hey, why aren't we thinking? Aren't we hearing this from our customers? Are we not keeping our ears to the ground? But other than that, we are neither on the arrogant side nor are we paranoid because we don't want to copy. We want to look for places and crevices that others can't do and just do exceedingly well there.
You know, you kind of danced around this a little bit, but let's just really go into GTM, India versus US, because for most Indian companies building product, this is the perpetual question: when to target the higher paying customers in US? When is it too soon? When is it too late?
I would say that you should see if you're building in India, it's likely that your initial investors are going to be Indian. Your network is likely to be stronger here, so the word of mouth gets stronger here, and it's okay to go and sell there because India will teach you how to build. It'll harden you, right? We started when we realized that the number of tickets that were coming as support tickets for bugs and issues that were like foundational stopped. We said, okay, the product seems to be in a strong place. We clearly have the sales leadership to go along with founder led sales to do it in the US. Let's now go to the US. And that process actually took us only about 3 to 4 months to get ready there because our sales in India took off pretty much from 0 to 100 in 30 seconds. So we knew that with the same messaging, so I got on a call, I mistook company A for company B and did the entire pitch, did the entire demo without having to take their name. And the demo landed, the pitch landed, we landed the customer. And it's only after the call that I realized. So I said, okay, the messaging is landing, irrespective of who the customer is. I think we can go and start replicating this in the US.
Oh, that's great. We didn't talk about fundraising at all, and often that becomes the entire sort of portion of a conversation. But everything else, getting it right, the things we talked about, is really what makes fundraising successful. But what would be to founders your top 3 learnings as far as fundraising goes, whether it's at the early stage or obviously that problem doesn't disappear or that need doesn't disappear as you grow. So at every stage, it's both the same and not the same. But your insights for other founders.
Yeah, I would pick the investor who you can call when things are on fire, and that person is going to pick up the phone on the first ring and offer you advice, or at least connect you to the right person with that advice. Early days, you don't know so many things, and the only way you can amplify it is when you get learnings from people like you who've seen hundreds and thousands of other companies do well or not do well, and impart that advice at the right time to us. So there are investors I've heard of who'll make the big pitch, but once the check is done, it's board meeting to board meeting. Whereas in early days, you need people who help you get to your first 50 customers faster, or make you hire faster, or make you at least stop doing 10 mistakes that others could have done faster. And second is, I think, especially in India, people founders view fundraising differently. I've realized one thing, that investors don't fund the desperate, they only fund the inevitable. So unless you have the conviction that what you're building is just absolutely amazing and your fundraise is inevitable, you can't expect somebody else to put somebody else's money backing you when you don't come with that conviction. So don't make fundraising the big event. Make the product and your conviction in the product, the space, the team, the founding, and your early traction to be the benchmark to go to investors and ask for their money.
I often think we don't get to know the people behind the success. And often the interesting part of the story is the making of the person, because the success is only an outcome out of who that person has become from a lifetime of experiences, lived experiences and learnings, And I remember as a child in a geography class, you don't know what random things stay with you as a child, but reading about Kilimanjaro and a snow-capped mountain in the middle of Africa somehow captured my fascination. And unfortunately, I didn't climb it with my father, though that would have been a fun thing to do because I and my dad loved outdoors a lot. But I did climb it eventually, which I couldn't have imagined sitting in a geography class, a middle class girl from an average family climbing Kilimanjaro would have been very far fetched in the world I grew up in. But I saw that you and your father climbed Kili. So I'm very curious what brought that about.
Yeah, it had been a few years of me being away from home, and it was father son bonding, and
It's a
we
very
said
hard bonding. It's a hard
we
trek,
didn't
I
have,
mean. So,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it was we under anticipated it, and my dad was way more agile than me. He was around 50 years old, and I would have been about 22, 23. It really sort of rekindled that father son bond, which, through your teenage years, you go into your 20s, and then you sort of try to become your own man. And then it got us together. And there isn't a week when we connect, we don't talk about some of the experiences that we've had there. In fact, that ended up, we chance encounter after that. A few weeks later, we met somebody who was part of Limca Book of Records, and he said, "Hey, wait, I think there is nobody who's a father-son duo who's climbed Kilimanjaro before this." And they got that record fact checked, and then we also ended up getting the Limca Book of Record for being the first
Wow.
father and son to climb
Yeah.
Mount Kilimanjaro. So it was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, nice memory to keep going back to share down the generations, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
that's great. I think anything that's difficult that you do together really bonds. So my team that I climbed with, there's still a lot that we chat about when we connect. But
Yeah.
In a similar vein, what made you become a lawyer to begin with? It's great that brought you to where you are today in doing this particular company. But what made you want to become a lawyer in a society where that seems like a third choice
Yeah,
to most
so
people?
actually, two things. First is John Grisham.
You read
And
his books,
yes.
but you became an entrepreneur, not a writer.
So actually, it's an interesting story. So I have two cousins who I'm very close to and who I deeply respect and admire. One went to IIT and then ISB and then became an entrepreneur. His own brother, my other cousin, he went to National Law School, became a lawyer, and is now a partner in a very big law firm. So I went to law school because of this cousin of mine, and then picked up the other cousin's skills, and they've been instrumental in building the cusp of both of them. You always have. Sometimes your parents would say, look at that person and how they are doing, and look at you. And these two were the cousins that I would always be compared to, because they're actually really smart and really fantastic. So yeah, so that got me into law school. I think he guided me. My cousin Yash, he guided me. He told me what law school was like, and I saw him up close, him studying as well, and that gave me the conviction. There was also the cusp where people, um, from it being a third choice, people started seeing some really well paid jobs going in house or in law firms coming up. And it was the right thing at the right time.
So you think after Spot Draft, there may still be a John Grisham in you?
No, I am a recovering lawyer. If there is a writer in me, it's about the recovery from law. But practice of law, I don't think, not in the near future. I don't anticipate that happening.
I don't know. Atul Gawande became a good doctor and a good writer. So who knows what future holds for us, right? So
True.
you may write entrepreneurial lawyer stories. Who knows? Would if you
But
do?
also, lawyers have become Gandhiji and Ambedkar and prime ministers as well. So I'm
Of
not
course,
ruling that out either.
That's true. I didn't go into politics. That's true. The nation building. So yeah, absolutely. India has a lot going for it right now, and but I watch out for it, Shashank, and be there to cheerlead whatever it is that you decide. We all live to be. I have 4 or 5 careers in our lives, is what I have discovered from experience. I mean, in my 30s, I would have thought 50 is old, and in my 40s, I would have thought 60 is old, and I'm 62 right now. Doesn't feel that old for whatever it's worth. So, what are your top 3 AI tools? This is a fun question that I'm sure we ask each other, in random moments to people. So I'd love to hear what your top 3 AI tools are.
First one is the best legal technology available to people, which is Spotdraft.
Spotdraft.
So I use it to dog food. I use it to do a lot of my work. Second is I use Claude. So Claude for both on Claude code side, Claude design, each of those things. And I use a tool called Cutshort. Sorry, it's called. I use a tool called for Excel sheet mangling. I always forget the name, but it's bookmarked. I'll send you the link. It helps me crunch data better and present data better. But if I had to, about 80-85% of my time is either on Spotdraft or on Claude.
Last question from me. How would you like to be described as a leader?
Somebody who's empathetic, passionate, yet objectively goal and data driven.
One last question for Spotdraft. What would success look like?
When we go from a noun to a verb, so just spot draft it. Instead of saying let's use Spotdraft. So just Google it. Why don't you Dunzo it? Why don't you Spotdraft it? I think that's. I'm not saying that it is. All of those companies have necessarily been successful from an investment perspective, but the fact that we would have, in a very foundational way, changed the way contracting is done and become the gold standard of how contracting should be is something that I would take pride in.
But you picked consumer examples. So for that to happen, you need to release a consumer version that I say, should I send a legal notice to my tenant and let me spot draft it? so maybe that version is coming and I look forward to it. So we don't spend so much money on lawyers, right? So it's been a fantastic conversation, Shashank. Thank you for being so generous with your thoughts, insights, and your time.
Thank you so much, Vani. Thank you for being such a wonderful host, and this was fun.
And by the way, I wish you and your entire team, becoming that spot draft noun and verb as the situation might demand.
Thank you.
All right.